Joshua Rubenstein, thank you very much for coming to UNC Chapel Hill and for talking to us in the Krasno event series here. We all enjoyed your lecture about Stalin and the German question. Enlighten me, what was Stalin's perspective on Germany after the Second World War? Was he optimistic? Was he pessimistic?
I think Stalin was hoping that he would see a united Germany that was demilitarized, and that would prevent West Germany, which was much larger and more powerful than the eastern side of Germany, which was controlled by the Soviets in the Soviet zone. That would prevent West Germany from joining a Western military alliance. That was his primary concern. And it brought about the Berlin blockade, and even on the eve of his death in late 1952, he was floating the idea of all military forces, Western and Soviet, withdrawing from Germany, leaving Germany united, but with a strong Soviet presence nearby. And of course, the West understood this would leave Germany vulnerable to Soviet pressure. By then, West Germany had been established, East Germany had been officially established. That idea was out of the cards. But that was Stalin's fugitive hope.
That was the so-called Stalin note, was it?
Yes.
Who was responsible for the division of Germany after the Second World War? Was it really Stalin, as the West claimed, or did the Western powers divide Germany?
I think the division of Germany can be laid at the feet of Adolf Hitler. I think the fact that Germany had waged for the second time in the 20th century an offensive war, particularly World War II, with all of its devastations, there was simply a determination that Germany should not be rearmed in its full capacity. And even rearming West Germany was done with some reluctance. Certainly the French were not fans of that. But integrating Germany into Western alliance, with all of the restrictions that implied, gave the West Europeans and the Americans some confidence that it could, quote unquote, control Germany, and that a democratic Germany would not pose a threat to either side of Europe.
So, concluding from what you just said, then was the West which divided Germany?
I think both sides saw a need to divide Germany. There was no urge on either side to really see a united Germany so soon after the close of World War II.
Stalin died in March 1953. That had repercussions for the Cold War. Some have said it was an important opportunity to do something about the severity of the Cold War and perhaps the continuation of the Cold War. How do you see that?
Well, I think there was an opportunity. I think Foster Dulles and Dwight Eisenhower resisted that opportunity for greater dialogue at the highest level with the Soviet leadership. I believe it's clear that the new heirs were confident enough that they wanted a dialogue to diffuse Korea, which they did, and perhaps a dialogue to diffuse the division of Germany, at least the effect of the division of Germany, with or without actually reuniting Germany. And they knew they were sitting on top of a powder keg in Eastern Europe. There were riots in Czechoslovakia and Bulgaria, and of course then a big set of riots in East Germany. The whole country was engulfed. So they knew they'd inherited tremendous problems from Stalin, and they immediately tried to diffuse some of those problems inside the country and over international issues. I do not believe that Eisenhower and Foster Dulles were up to the opportunity. But once you had the revolt in East Germany and the suppression by thousands of Soviet troops throughout East Germany in June of 1953, that precluded any further attempt at negotiation at that time.
In the 1970s, a rapprochement between the West, particularly West Germany, and the Soviet Union did occur. Do you think people still remember that lost opportunity of the 1950s, or was it an entirely new development?
I think it was an entirely new development. 20 years had passed, new presidents had taken over leadership in both countries. Whatever happened in 1953 was over. I think Germans remembered the revolt in East Germany and wondered if more could have been done. But by then we'd had 56 in Budapest, 68 in Czechoslovakia. Those are far more present in the memory of people, the suppression. So the need for détente was real on both sides.
Thank you. Under Gorbachev and Yeltsin, we had a solid rapprochement between the West and Soviet Union, Russia. Now, when we jump ahead, look at the Putin era, that of course is not the case at all. And we are, to put it mildly, quite estranged from Russia, with the Germans perhaps being particularly interested of re-engaging with Russia. Do you think that would be the right way forward, or what is your way for the future?
I do think both sides, to one degree or another, are responsible for this estrangement. I think the consequences of enlarging NATO so far to the east turned out to be too far from my point of view. I think it was unnecessary. I think it would have been possible to extend a security blanket to Eastern Europe and the Baltic states short of formal entry into NATO. That's just my view. But the fact is that Putin is playing a long game. He's playing a weak set of cards, but playing them well. So I think he is interested in destabilizing our democracies, and I speak of our shared democracies in Western Europe and the United States. I think Mr. Trump is helping him for one reason or another. And I think for that reason, the West has to be wary of accepting a new rapprochement with Putin on his terms. That there should be a greater pushback on his interest and his active interest in intervening in Western elections, whether it's America or Germany or Italy or the Brexit vote in England. I think there has to be some punishment for that, obviously short of war. And I don't think the Trump administration is doing enough in that regard. And by the way, to go back to the death of Stalin so many years ago, there is a lesson to be learned from that, and a lesson to be learned from how President Eisenhower and John Foster Dulles responded. I think they had a lack of understanding of the kind of dictatorship they were facing once that dictator died. The dictatorship survived. It was a very different kind of country once Stalin was out of the way. And one of the biographers of John Foster Dulles once said that Stalin did John Foster Dulles a favor. He died. And John Foster Dulles returned the favor by pretending that Stalin hadn't died. I think you need a realistic view of the kind of country you're facing. I don't think we have that in the United States.
So are you saying that we also have a lack of understanding of Putin's regime?
Yes. I think on the part of some people, just the degree of brutality, the degree of cynicism, and the willingness to intervene throughout the Western world, I don't think we've responded adequately to that. I don't know what the response should be. We don't want to engage in systematic cyber warfare. That has too many implications for all of our societies. But I think they might even be more vulnerable than we are.
But do the lessons of the 1970s, Ostpolitik, rapprochement, détente, which indirectly contributed to the end of the Cold War, do they not tell us that we need more engagement rather than more punishment with the Russians?
Well, there should be negotiations. There should be engagement. There certainly should be people-to-people engagement. And there is much more of that. There's Russian citizens traveling, there's tourism, the borders remain open. The internet is pretty open. That didn't even exist 30, 40 years ago. But the engagement has to be done on our terms as well, not only on the Russian government's terms.
Thank you very much, Joshua Rubenstein.
Thank you
very much for your insights.
You bet.